Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene of January 19, 2026, time in Texas, about 9 a.m. Happy MLK birthday today. This is a banking and post office holiday in the U.S. We have a lot of parades going on. And some of the things I'm going to cover today: X2 flare and a strange train crash in Spain. President Trump, Denmark can't defend. In Iran, I have sources that indicate there have been 60,000 civilians killed by the Iranian military. Oh, and Cuba declares war on the U.S. So we have this from the Telegraph, that Cuba declares war against the U.S. In response to the U.S. embargo of oil from Venezuela, so no oil is reaching Cuba. However, this deck of war was put forth by the Cuban National Defense and not the government of Cuba. So it's unclear who's in charge in Cuba. So that's going on. And we have this. So we had yesterday, coming off the sun, we had an X1.99 flare. Some are calling a X2 flare. That did give us a radiation storm called a solar storm. It's up to a S3 level. Also gave us radio storm 2 to 3, interfering with radio signals and other communication signals. And it did put out a halo CME, which is a large CME, Earth-facing, that will hit Earth about January 20 to 21, and possibly later tonight, and give us a strong G3 to G4 with a KP index of 6 to 8. Now, I submit there's the possibility that this strong flare from the sun could also have impacted the trains in Spain. We saw last year, I believe, we had a blackout in electricity in Spain and also France that was later tied to solar activity. And what we're seeing going on in Spain, they had last night a train crash in Spain. One train going toward Madrid and one going toward Cordova, north and southbound. Now, these trains were on parallel tracks, and I'll demonstrate to you. So they were on parallel tracks, one going to Madrid and one going toward Cordova. They were both modern trains, recently inspected. Railroad experts who were called to the crash site are mystified. They have no explanation for the train crash, but these railroad experts did rule out human error, saying it must be some type of technical issue. What we know today is that they have cranes out there, so the two trains were on parallel tracks, and for some reason, one of the trains, both trains, not one, both, derailed, and the carriages of the trains are all twisted, so they derailed, jumped the tracks, and then they rolled down an embankment. So far, they have 39 dead. They expect more. They have cranes out there lifting up the trains. They expect the death toll to go up. Injured are dozens and dozens of people. And, yeah, both trains overturn. The metal carriages are twisted. I put forth this: the possibility that this X-flare yesterday, which would correlate with about the time the train accident occurred, could have been part of the impact cause behind the train crash, because we have seen and demonstrated by science and technology that the electrical grid blackout in Spain and France last year was tied to solar activity. It's being put forth that the particular geology in Spain and France and other parts of Europe are particularly attuned to impact by space weather. So that's going on. And we have this. In Greenland, Dialogue Works interviewed Colonel Bod, who says that Denmark cannot defend Greenland against Russia and China, and pointing out, as I did in a previous video, Denmark's own intel service just put out an intel report a month ago saying that both Russia and China will take Greenland by force militarily. Now, of course, obviously, Denmark cannot defend Greenland against Russia and China. So that's going on. And we see that Colonel Bod is calling President Trump's tariff move against Europe to get them to sell Greenland to the U.S. as a form of blackmail. I see it as a part of Make America Great Again. President Trump and the U.S. military have said that the U.S. need Greenland for U.S. strategic security, which would also secure Greenland, Canada, the U.S., and ultimately Europe. So we see the Europeans acting irrationally. And we have this. In Syria, now, this al-Shara, alleged to be the president of Syria, has moved in Syrian military to take over a Kurdish area and wants the Kurdish military to incorporate into his military. This is a unique genetic and cultural and religion people. But hey, doesn't al-Shara have a history of being a terrorist and actually killing U.S. military? Yes, he does. So we shouldn't be surprised to see him moving in any kind of military he can operate and coming against an independent people. But during the course of this, the U.S. military, the greatest military in the history of the world, as far as I'm concerned, did retaliate. For the recent deaths, we had 2 U.S. military troops and 1 American translator killed in Syria. We do not know by who, although most likely it was a terrorist ISIS group, and the U.S. military have killed the leader of this group, who, Jasal, J-A-S-L, Bilal Hassan al-Jassam, Al-Qaeda leader tied to ISIS, and that's the group that was tied to the killing of the 2 U.S. military and the 1 American translator. So way to go, U.S. military. And we have this regarding Ukraine, an interview with Alex Craner. He's a European journalist, that the U.S. Sees Europe as being an adversary. Yes, they are being an adversary now with the U.S. acquisition of Greenland, and that China is certainly the enemy of America. And we have this. President Trump's taking, so Alex Craner puts forth the same position I do, with President Trump gaining Greenland for U.S. strategic security. We'll get a twofer. It'll also take us out of NATO. And Alex Craner also voices the same position. The Greenland taken by the U.S. will get the U.S. out of NATO. And this is an interesting point I had not thought about, that Alex Craner brings out. This will be good for the U.S. because legally we are tied to NATO through a treaty. Now, a treaty requires ratification by Congress, 2/3 of the Congress. However, if the EU takes certain steps, as we're seeing them take right now, it gets the U.S. out of the NATO treaty. So way to go, President Trump. So that's going on. And we have this in Iran. The U.S. military continues to prep to take Iran. We're moving carrier strike groups in, planes and bombs. Okay. So I have from a credible source an estimation of the number of Iranian civilians, unarmed, who have been killed in the streets of Iran by the Iranian military. 50 to 60,000 is being put forth. And this individual has ties to the U.S. government, and I believe his information is much more credible than other sources I've heard. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.